Number two, be patient. While everyone's seen a lot of overnight success with a lot of TikTokers, no matter who it is, don't compare yourself to them, because your brand is your brand, and what works for them isn't necessarily going to be the exact same thing that works for you. So just keep consistency, post daily if you can, and I'm sure one day something's going to stick for you, but just hang in there, because you can't expect to become an overnight success every time. And as for point number three, doing more of what works, as you experiment and are patient with what you do, as soon as you find a format that sticks, just run with it. And that's exactly what happened to us with Finish the TikTok Lyric. We started to create more ideas like dance charades and 5-second songs that looked and felt exactly like it. And that's what grew us 10 million followers in the past year. And before I go, I want to give you guys a couple of fun facts about me. Fun fact number one, I actually have a DJ alter ego, Money Pace. He's a world-renowned DJ, Vegas residency. He's super low-key, but he's like really talented at what he does. Fun fact number two, Flighthouse was actually started on Christmas Day 2015. So it's been about 5 years at this point almost, and it's just been an awesome journey. However, despite COVID, I'm super excited for just the rest of this year and the amount of projects that we have coming out. So thanks guys for watching. Basically gave you the sauce, so go ahead, run with it, use it, blow up. Let me know how it goes.
Head on over to the Collision mobile app. Jacob will be answering your questions in our Q&A forum. Nothing unites social media users more than a good meme, and since the lockdown, the internet has exploded with new memes, GIFs, and more. We asked David Schneider from the social creative agency That Lot to talk us through how brands, broadcasters, and general internet users have reacted to the biggest global event of our lifetime.
Hello Collision, great to be here. Well, not so great to be here in my home where I've been for what seems like 17 years under the lockdown, but great to be talking to you from in front of my kitchen wall. I have a social media company called That Lot, and social has been one of the silver linings in this dark medieval hellscape we find ourselves trapped in. Usage has increased phenomenally. TikTok alone witnessed a 57% increase in global downloads in the first quarter of the year, while advertisers on Facebook can now reach more than 2 billion people. If we assume that all of these users are at least 13 years old, this means that more than 1/3 of the world's total population over bar mitzvah age, or whatever your cultural equivalent may be, is now on Facebook. Social media's kept us going while we've been trapped in our real-time disaster movie. We're probably, 30 minutes into the movie now? With relatable content like this lockdown gem you may have seen.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is the captain speaking. Just about ready to depart. I should be away on schedule in the next couple of minutes or so.
But what about brands? How are they faring? How can brands get it right during the present crisis? Well, the thing is that under COVID, everything has become exaggerated. Good people have become more clearly good. Bad people have become more clearly bad. I won't mention any names, but please don't drink any bleach. And that's what we've learned on social, that the same rules apply as always, only even more so. According to a survey done in the UK, 70% of people want brands to be helpful in the new normal, but 80% believe brands shouldn't try to profit from it. Brands had to ask themselves, how can we help? Which is what they should always ask, but more so than ever. And it was clear what they have to do, which is the same as ever, but more so, listen. That's why things like these work so well. They know exactly what we are thinking. They reflect ourselves back at us. And there's nothing more powerful during a pandemic than feeling listened to. Well, a cure would be better, obviously. Listening also helped us with the broadcaster E4. Before the pandemic, things were going great guns for E4. We had more video views on Facebook than any other TV channel on the planet. There may be more popular feeds on other planets, I don't know, but on this one, we're number one. But we very quickly realised that our normal output wouldn't cut it, and we pivoted to fun, relatable content that had to be either uplifting, helpful, or zeitgeisty, if that's the right adjective for zeitgeist. When you saw the response from our followers, we really felt that we'd done something amidst the bleakness of the corona apocalypse, all thanks to rigorous listening and being relatable. It's the sort of thing we do for Prime Video as well, like this example for the comedy Fleabag, rocking up to the 9 a.m. video call. And top tip, we always include copy with a double punch, so one in the image and one in the post copy for extra shareability. These rules apply from the biggest brand to the smallest local business. One of my favourite pieces of social was from a small restaurant in Germany that posted a picture of the social distancing hats that it had provided for its customers. Listening and being relatable have always been the secrets of success on social, now even more so. But, and it's a big one, I like big buts and I cannot lie, something else that always applies on social becomes even more essential in these COVID times, and that's that you have to ask yourself, do I have the right to join in this conversation? When McDonald's redid their arches to reflect social distancing, there was a lot of blowback. People felt they hadn't earned the right to play in this space, that it was just virtue signalling. But when they started giving away drinks in their restaurants to key workers, then that felt more authentic. They'd become part of the solution. So now, more than ever, you need to stay in your lane. Audi did that in Australia, and if anyone should know about staying in their lane, it's a car company. With everyone locked in their houses, they posted a beautifully edited 4-hour drive with calming music, which is completely unlike my memories of 4-hour drives with my two eldest kids shouting at each other and throwing things while my toddler threw up on her new iPad. What they did though is they gave people what was needed. They brought the outside in and stayed beautifully in their lane. The other question to ask yourself is, do I have the right tone of voice? See what I did there? Now, even more than before, you need to be clear on how you sound. Don't go changing. People need to know who you are, whether you're a huge corporation or a small business. It's essential that a brand is human and sounds human. No one needs a brand which is like the butler in Downton Abbey, coming in, delivering their message and then going out again. So long as you know your place and your tone of voice and who you want to speak to, all things that apply normally, but even more so now, you can start to help, whether it's workouts or financial advice or recipes. You can't go to IKEA, then the IKEA meatballs shall come to you. Brands on social under COVID need to find a way to help, even if it's showing how to make a nacho boat out of an Oatly carton. That's their lane, that's their tone of voice, they nailed it. But this is where social comes into its own. Every Thursday night in the UK, we come out of our front doors and clap for key workers. It shows our appreciation, but it also is a moment when we become aware that we're part of a community. We are desperate for community right now, and that's what social offers us. There's been a huge change in the last couple of months from people being passive consumers of social to active ones. Streets setting up WhatsApp groups, mutual aid groups being set up on Facebook. In a way, social has gone back to its origins. When we can't go out, social becomes the place where we meet. It becomes our community, our neighborhood. Zoom is our bar, TikTok our nightclub, Pinterest, the place where we pin things, I don't know. Every day, social is creating communities, bringing people together to show their creativity with TikTok challenges. Ratchet, sassy, moody, nasty. Or raise money as they did with Captain Now Sir Tom Moore. It's vital for brands that they identify their community and work to support them. Look at the Getty Museum, who brought art lovers and others together to recreate a work of art from home. If you can access humour as a brand, then that is a brilliant way of building a community and making a difference. They say that laughter is the best medicine, something that at the moment it's quite hard to accept. A vaccine, for instance, would definitely be better, I think. Anyway, we run the social accounts of the satirical TV show Have I Got News For You, posting jokes and satirical commentary such as this from the end of March. Breaking world bids farewell to March, which began 36 years and 9 months ago today. And we've seen our numbers hit new levels because of the desperate desire to come together to laugh in and at our misery, with organic retweets almost doubling to 209,000 in 7 weeks. It's like raw data showing how desperate people are to laugh. There are other things brands must do on social under COVID, which apply anyway, but even more so. This is no time for 3-month content calendars and 237 levels of sign-off. Things change so quickly under COVID, you have to be topical, agile and responsive. Keep listening. Keep asking yourself, what do people want now? And what about now? The Audi 4-hour drive was a great example of what we needed in lockdown, but not so much as we come out of it. And even more so than before, to cut through and make a difference, you have to be original. This video by Microsoft Sam on YouTube was pretty damning in the way it deconstructed so many brand videos and found they all had the same elements.
Family.
I co-wrote The Death of Stalin, available to download at a streaming service near you, or you could just chuck me 20 cents and we can cut out the middleman. And one thing I understood from my research is that restrictions, in that case censorship and a dictator, for us now the virus, even though of course they can be deadly, can prompt creativity as a silver lining. Can't film on location or in a studio? Use high quality equipment at home or animation. COVID has also pushed us to look further into how AR can help us perk up the DR, depressing reality, we live in now. So if I just tap there, oh, that's better. Oh yes, a hat, shades, cool. Ooh, smashing. But sometimes originality lies in just great creative. Like this from the Ohio Department of Health. But my top tip for success going forward is look at what's changing with the platforms themselves. They're competing against each other like so many King Kongs and Godzillas. Look at their new features and think about how you can use them. TikTok, for instance, has exploded during quarantine, with 34% growth during lockdown in the UK. The app is about to hit 2 billion installs and for the first time has been outperforming Instagram and Facebook. We're moving brands you wouldn't have expected on TikTok, like McCain who make oven fries, over to the platform with great success. It's like the catastrophocalypse we find ourselves in has accelerated everything on social, and those brands who can embrace it and be brave and positive are benefiting. Facebook, for instance, has registered a 70% increase in lives since the lockdowns began. Instagram Stories continues to grow, while we found that quarantine has created a huge surge in interest and viewing numbers for IGTV, especially when compared to Square Video on the grid. Yes, people are watching IGTV, so get out there, get vertical and get them some content. And don't forget Pinterest, where searches are up 55% and board creation up 45% on this time last year. Your dad might be struggling to use Zoom, but with theatres and cinemas not likely to open for a while, we're looking at its potential to host live events, along with House Party, who now have great tech to enable watch-alongs with celebs like Alicia Keys doing their celebby things. We're looking at how to use Twitch for clients who you wouldn't normally expect to use it. Closed groups on Facebook present a great opportunity for brands, and we're looking at sophisticated chatbots for Messenger and how to push into your dad's true favourite platform, WhatsApp. It's a world where streaming platforms are our new masters, or as Ross McLean described the timing of the quarantine on Twitter, this is one elaborate launch strategy for Disney+. But social is also thriving and developing at an unparalleled rate. So there are some tips for succeeding on social at the moment. But the one ring to rule them all is be a force for good. It's always been true, but join in the chorus, even more so now. From your copy to your creative, empathy, wit, inspiration, and dare I say it at a marketing conference, love is what's needed most now. No one's saying brands and social managers are key workers. No one's going to come out of their houses of an evening to clap for them for 2 minutes to say thank you. But it is an exciting time to work in social because that's where everyone has to be now, whether they want to or not. So stay safe, stay sane, and here's hoping that in a few years' time, you'll be able to look back and joke about this situation we find ourselves in with your 3 children, lockdown, quarantine, and Instagram Live, maybe as you reminisce over a great viral tweet like this one.
You really do need to start looking now. She dropped a bombshell.
Thank you.
David is doing a Q&A shortly where he'll be talking about how social media is fueling and responding to protests and politics. Up next, we've got two speakers who are not afraid to speak their mind on social media or in front of the camera. She works for Cambridge Analytica, the company behind the most scandalous data breach of recent times, and he was the shortest-serving communications director of Donald Trump's administration. One thing they've both got in common, they are scathing and criticism from their former employers. Grab the popcorn, it's over now to Brittany Kaiser and Anthony Scaramucci.
First, I'm going to throw kind of a toss-up question about social media to the both of us. In the last couple of years, social media, Facebook, Twitter, all the rest, have been under a lot of criticism. But the question is, has it really changed? Have we really seen a difference in the way that these companies treat content and treat us? Brittany, why don't you start with that?
I would say over the past few years, we've been slowly getting big tech and social media platforms to really understand what their biggest problems are, to take fake news and disinformation, abuse of micro-targeting, negative use cases of algorithms where content is being pushed up that is inflammatory and that is going viral, and that's how we've trained our news feeds, that's how we've trained our daily realities. I think that somehow it's taken something as serious as coronavirus, where fake news and disinformation is actually affecting hundreds and thousands of people that are, for instance, in Iran, fake news and disinformation put thousands of people in hospital and hundreds of people died when they were told that they could take something that they couldn't. So I've seen Facebook especially start to take fake news and disinformation seriously when apparently election intervention wasn't enough to get them going. So the fact that we've seen them making that investment, I think, is a pretty serious turn of events that I didn't see that momentum in trying to make a change for the past 2 years or so since the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Yeah, Anthony, how about you? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it's improved. I think Brittany's correct. I think it has improved on the margin. I think that they're trying to become more socially conscious about what they're doing and how they're formatting and editing. But I would probably make more of a cultural generic statement to everybody. Kellyanne Conway, whatever you think of her, she's a friend of mine. The day that I joined the White House, she gave me the best advice ever, and I'll share it with everybody. She said, "Give me your phones." I said, "Okay." And she went into my notifications and she shut off every notification that I had in social media. And she said, "Don't ever look at it again." And particularly the anonymous stuff. And so what ends up happening now is that idiot that we knew in high school, or that jerk in the basement somewhere that was the village idiot, has now become the global village idiot. And they're able to prey on people's success and try to tear people down. So when I speak to younger people, I tell them that advice: shut off the notifications. If you want to put stuff on social media, put it up there, but don't look at the stuff coming back to you, because those are people that are typically envious or are doing things in a way to tear down your good work or your progress in life. And so that would be my statement on social media.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've definitely had issues with having a healthy, mentally, physically, and emotionally relationship with technology, with devices. They've been designed to be addictive. And now that we're being forced to lead a completely digital life, the effects of that are being exacerbated. So
very true.
I totally agree with you. Most people, the notifications that are taking away your valuable time from doing something productive are mostly not even from humans. At least turn off all the notifications that are not a direct message or a phone call from a human being. And you probably don't know this, but you can even turn your phone into black and white, because the colors are also designed to be addictive. But you're picking up your phone hundreds of times a day when you don't have to.
Yeah, you could turn your phone to black and turn it off too.
Very true. My phone's been on silent for 10 years, so I'm not one that gets targeted by notifications too much.
So, Brittany, I know you have talked about the political advertising situation in social media, particularly on Facebook. What did you learn from Cambridge Analytica that led you to your position? And why don't you say what it is?
So I decided to become a whistleblower after spending years working at Cambridge Analytica and with Facebook because I realized how disastrous the data industry had become, how easily it is for people to be targeted. I mean, that's why I called my book that, and how unfortunately it's very difficult for us to enforce all of the laws that we enforce in our day-to-day lives online. So for instance, we do have laws against fake news and disinformation, slander and libel, incitement of violence and racial hatred and sexism. We have plenty of anti-discrimination laws that deal with this, and also deal with Federal Election Commission laws like stopping voter suppression. Yet somehow, when working with companies like Facebook, they seem to develop policies that don't allow us to enforce the social contracts and the legislation that we already have in place. So I think it's been shown, especially over the past 2 years, that we could be making more investments in prevention of these types of violations. But it took really a global pandemic for some of these platforms to take it seriously. Elections were not enough somehow, shockingly.
Well, there's a lot of speech which is not illegal, but it's just wrong. And, for instance, the Facebook policy now is to let a politician running for office say anything he or she wants to say, an outright lie, and they won't fact check it. Do you think that Facebook should change that policy?
Absolutely. You and I are held to community standards. I am not allowed to go and spread fake news and disinformation from my own account yet. If President Trump decides to, then that content won't be removed. In fact, it took direct disinformation about the US Census for it to be the first time that Trump campaign content in 2020 was taken down.
Right. Well, Anthony, speaking of Donald Trump, is a guy you know. I'm curious, is his Twitter behavior done out of strategy, or just he doesn't have any impulse control? What's the deal there?
No, I mean, that is total strategy. So you cannot underestimate the president's intelligence. I think what happens is he creates these binary feelings. Either people love him and they get into a cult-like position with him, or they hate him and everything that he does they say is crazy and he's stupid and stuff like that. He's not stupid. I worked for him for 9 months on the campaign. He went from being a reality television star 17 short months later, knocking out 18 established political figures to become the American president. So you can't say that the guy's not smart. He has great political instincts, and the Twitter feed is a base play. And so what the president's doing right now is he wants to magnify his base, and he wants to get that voter participation up 10% from where it was in 2016. And he's done the math. He knows if he can get it up 10%, he has a very high likelihood of winning in those swing states that he needs to win. He may not win the popular vote. Let's assume that he won't win that. But this is a tribal, polarizing figure. He is the chieftain of the red tribe. And if you give me that Twitter feed, you start reading me tweets, I can tell you exactly what he's thinking about, why he's doing that, why he is saying that, and who he is trying to trigger. And he loves when these people talk about him. He doesn't care if they're talking negatively about him or positively about him. I took the hydroxychloroquine. There could be a 25-minute psychotherapy session on one of these news channels about that sort of nonsense. He loves it. So no, this is not impetuous behavior. This is premeditated behavior. And remember, when he's talking on that Twitter feed, plus Instagram and Facebook, he has 150 million people he's reaching. That's 1.5 times the Super Bowl audience every time he puts his thumbs on that phone.
Yeah, but isn't there any concern at all that there is a slice of voters that will be turned off if he really goes to some of the extremes that he often goes to?
So the last time I talked to President Trump was Easter of 2019. He had called me, actually. He was very sore at me for an op-ed that I wrote in The Hill, where I basically said, Mr. President, the press is not the enemy of the people. And I went through the Bill of Rights and explained why the press is there to protect us against autocracy and to be an additional screen to check people in power. And it also teaches our young children how to think and create. If you tell a second grader they can think and speak freely, they go on and create Facebook and Google and Apple and smartphones. So it's also a component to our economic innovation. Well, he called me He's very sore at me. That didn't fit his plans. Demonizing the press is very successful for his base. I then said, Stephen and Brittany, well, what about those moderates? What about those independents that you're going to need in those swing states to come your way to win the election? And I quote, I'll worry about the base. Everything else will take care of itself. That's his philosophy. Now, you could agree with it or disagree with it, and he may have turned you off. He has certainly turned me off at this point, and a lot of other people. But let me tell you something. The guy has great political instincts. You want to beat the guy, you got to think like the guy, and then you have to outwit him. You can't look at the guy and say, okay, I'm going to, play this the way the other 18 did. I admire Joe Biden for not responding or taking the bait to the nonsense that Trump and his acolytes are saying about him. I think that's brilliant because the other 18 people took the bait. They got in there in the mud with him, and nobody is better than Trump in the mud. Nobody.
Correct. And unfortunately, what we found out at Cambridge Analytica through national testing is that the more inflammatory the content is, the higher it performs. If you target people with anger, fear, that is the type of messaging that unfortunately increases engagement, goes viral, gets people angry, and gets pushed to the top of everybody's news feed and search feeds. And that is one of the biggest problems with a lot of the big tech platforms today, is that we're not taking more control over what content people should and should not see. How can we get real news in front of people instead of just something that makes them angry and gets them out of bed in the morning in order to be more angry instead of doing something productive for society? So we do have the ability to affect this over the next few years, but new legislation and regulation is going to be needed. We've seen that these platforms are not choosing to take the ethical and moral step themselves. They have to be forced to.
Well, it seems to me that there's almost the equivalent of a nature-nurture issue when we look at social media at a global level. I mean, social media just...
I think one of the saddest missed opportunities of social media is that we haven't paid enough attention about how we can prevent bad actors from abusing these platforms. I totally agree that most people built the platforms that we use every day because they wanted to connect us. That's what all of this was built for, in order to make our lives a better, more convenient, more interesting, more connected place. And we weren't thinking about how big things are now. And I think for the past few years, tech executives have been too slow to address some of these problems. They still have not made the investment that we require in order to protect ourselves. And I think it's going to take an entire new generation where kids are taught to read the terms and conditions before they download an app, and all of their data is taken from them without explicit informed consent. A whole new generation in order to really prevent the problems that we see in people my age and older. We are addicted to devices. We are targeted with negative content. We are so easy to manipulate these days. But I really hope that I don't see the same for my children and grandchildren.
Anthony, what do you think?
I would say that, remember that we have politics because it's a substitute for murder and savage killing. And so when you really think about the species and its evolvement over time, it's no wonder to me that politics is vicious, and there's no wonder to me that there's viciousness in anonymity on the internet. And so we're all trying to become more civilized and move away from our primordial and atavistic instincts, but they're there. And I think what we are all alarmed by is that we see them expressed in social media because people can take cover behind these names. It's very rare for me that I see verified people. And I know this will never happen, but if you said to Twitter and Facebook, okay, listen, need the license, got to put your face, your social security number, and you're now verified, you'd see a lot of that nonsense drop because people would conform to the way they would in a social setting because people don't like other people thinking badly about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the challengers that we're seeing to traditional social media platforms right now are specifically seeking to cure some of those ills. for instance, using KYC, AML, digital identity verification for you to get an account in the first place, so we can stop the proliferation of fake accounts and trolls and bot farms that are plaguing, I would say, a lot of civil discourse online. These social media platforms are pushing us to become more biased, and therefore we're more separated than ever before in the way that we see the world. Everyone is either very conservative or very progressive, and finding a uniting middle ground where we can all actually understand each other and negotiate in politics to get more done than we're getting done today. That's really the biggest problem.
Yes or no? 2020 election, will social media be as disastrous as it was in 2016? Yes or no? Anthony, start.
Yes.
Brittany?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. I wish we could be happier about that, but have a good year.
Okay, guys. Nice to be on. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys.
Brittany and Anthony will be answering your questions, so head over to the Q&A forum and put your questions to them.
Across the Western world, there's massive discontent and anger.
We have legalized the abuse of the person.
We need equality, and I don't want to feel like I have to wait for that. I want it right now.
There are many challenges and opportunities facing us at this moment.
If we get it wrong, every generation that follows us will pay a price.
The future is not a solo act. It will take all of us working together.
Next up, another Cambridge Analytica employee. He shot to fame after blowing the whistle on the alleged scrape of 87 million people's personal Facebook data. Did that swing the 2016 election for Trump? Did it get Brexit done? History will judge. Christopher Wiley has since made a career change and is now a tech expert for H&M. He joins us now to discuss how data transparency is moving things in the right direction for big brands seeking to be socially responsible.
Chris, thanks for joining us at Collision from Home. To jump straight in, sort of most people, sort of when they last saw you, you were in the middle of a fight with Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, all sorts of others over, we were told the future of democracy. What moves you on from that into fashion?
Well, I think, it's sort of funny because one of the things that people often don't realize about me is that before Cambridge Analytica, I was actually midway through a PhD where I was looking at fashion trend forecasting as the focus of my study and my research. I'm interested in how culture changes and evolves, and fashion is often, a primary artifact that we can look at in terms of the evolution of like social values and aesthetics, and the intermingling of culture. So I've always actually found it very interesting. It's sort of where my passion is, and it's great that I can sort of go back into it and sort of move on from perhaps higher stakes games.
So are you saying fashion's low stakes then?
I wouldn't say that fashion is low stakes. I think fashion has an immense impact on some very intimate aspects of people's lives. When you think about, clothing, wearing clothing is one of the few things that everybody does around the world, save a small exception of nudists. That everybody gets dressed in the morning. Everybody wants to look good and feel good about how they look. And when you sort of think about how sort of intimate that is, and that it actually has quite a significant impact, I think, on people's lives in a way that they may not pay attention to. So in that sense, in a very personal sense, fashion is impactful. But at the same time, it's compared to I would say probably the White House is higher stakes than a new collection. But in other ways, I think fashion is quite interesting and impactful in people's lives.
So as you kind of say there, psychology is a huge part of fashion. People dress to fit in, or they dress to look different. it's sort of these big choices. I think a lot of what people found creepy about some of what Cambridge Analytica did was this bid to use personality tests and psychological traits to influence their vote. Is your sort of new job using those kind of traits and that kind of data to influence what they buy instead?
I wouldn't. I think, you know, comparing sort of Cambridge Analytica to you know, studying how people wear clothes is a bit apples and oranges. What I would say is that, you know, there are ethical and responsible ways of using research and using data. You know, data is a tool, and you know, if you think about all kinds of tools, whether it's a car or even something like a knife, right? A chef's knife can make a Michelin star meal. It could also be a weapon of murder. So it's sort of the intention and how it's used, I think, is sort of an important aspect there. But you know, when I look at the projects that I work on at H&M, to be a more inclusive company and to be a more inclusive and have more inclusive products. So using data and using research to better understand, for example, how does culture interplay with what people want and whether or not we're being responsive to that. You know, fashion has long had a problem with, you know, frankly, Eurocentrism, and you know, we have a much wider market. So how can we better serve and be more inclusive to those more diverse markets? But also things like, you know, size inclusivity. You know, fashion hasn't, I think, really spent a lot of time looking at the fact that there is a wide sort of breadth of different shapes and sizes of people around the world. And our jobs is to adorn those bodies in fabric. And so if we don't have a good understanding of those shapes and sizes and how people are, then we aren't doing our job. So I think, you know, people, I think, rightfully are skeptical of many different applications of data and AI, but there are genuinely positive impacts that you can have if you apply data in a way where you are trying to amplify a person's agency or give them more choices, rather than necessarily leading them down a path that you want for them. So I think in that sense, you know, I feel much more comfortable working on projects like that than, you know, perhaps in the political arena or other arenas.
Cool. So kind of an argument there that there's that use of data for social good as well as for the economic good of the company. Can you sort of walk through an example of what you're doing in your current role? I think your title is Director of Research, isn't it? Pretty broad.
Yeah.
Now, what data are you collecting or analysing or picking up, and what are the outcomes that you're trying to get from them?
Well, I think, you know, right now with, for example, coronavirus probably being the most salient issue, not just commercially, but also socially, and just in every sort of angle you look at, coronavirus is there. So, you know, looking at, for example, what is the impact that, you know, both the pandemic and the lockdown has had on our customers, but also young people in general. And, you know, one of the things that I think is quite cool about H&M, in particular with their new CEO, is really trying to have a more contextual understanding of our role in people's lives, that we can't separate, for example, the generational equity aspects to this pandemic, or the gender equity aspects of this pandemic, and the recovery of certain sectors like fashion. You know, our customers are predominantly younger and they're more female. And these are the kinds of people who are going to be more vulnerable and more impacted by this pandemic. And so, you know, trying to better understand what are the broader dynamics at play, not just in terms of our marketing or our product lineup, but also what are the important social dynamics at play that may impact how we need to behave or react as a responsible company. So the types of work that I'm sort of focusing on right now is really trying to understand how is this pandemic going to impact young people and in particular young women.
Say sort of a huge recession coming after several months of people not having anything to dress up for, and possibly a long time more before big gatherings. Yeah. Is there a risk that if we have been making steps forward in trying to sort ethical supply chains, transparency, trying to think about some of the social implications of fashion, is there a risk that we sort of lose all of that at the moment because the industry's got to be in a drive for survival?
I think that there is a risk. I'm happy that I work for a brand that has committed to pay, for all of its orders, and it's not backing out just because of, the pandemic. I think we were one of the first brands to say that we'll honor our word and we'll honor our contracts. But I agree that there is a risk of, I think, companies losing focus. Frankly, I don't think there's been enough focus in pre-pandemic times towards, the industry in general, looking at, whether it's labor standards or, enhancing our sustainability credentials. But one of the things that I think may come out of this is, particularly when you look at younger consumers, so Gen Z, this is probably a generationally defining moment for Gen Z. When people sort of talk about what is Gen Z, well, I think Gen Z is the generation that emerges from a pandemic and really comes of age. And when you look at, what's happened in these young people's lives before the pandemic, growing up with, the election of Donald Trump, or with Brexit, or with political turmoil, whether you're in Eastern Europe or in Brazil. And that when young people, oftentimes people in marketing will talk about brand authenticity and all of that. But one of the things that at least I've noticed is that when you have younger consumers wanting business to take a lead and taking action on important social issues, it's because the traditional political or social leaders that previous generations may have looked to for leadership, currently are, Donald Trump and others who, a lot of younger people don't trust and don't support. And so what that means is that there is more responsibility going to be placed on the private sector and on large businesses to stand up and fill some of that role. And so I think responsive businesses should pick up on that and understand that, your future consumers are going to be thinking very differently than perhaps your generation has about commerce and consumption.
Thank you very much.
Across the Western world, there's massive discontent and anger.
We have legalized the abuse of the person.
We need equality, and I don't want to feel like I have to wait for that. I want it right now.
There are many challenges and opportunities facing us at this moment.
If we get it wrong, every generation that follows us will pay a price.
The future is not a solo act. It will take all of us working together.
I may be biased, but I think this next company has a wonderful name. Let's switch gears and look at how to overcome operational challenges during a pandemic. Could robotics be the answer to process automation? One man who thinks so is David Yang, CEO of Abby.
Hospital emergency room, people are waiting to get help. According to a study by the CDC, admitted patients in the Washington, D.C. wait a median of 286 minutes for their room in the hospital. Patients are waiting hours in emergency rooms. But according to the same report, most visits do not require immediate attention. Only 9% of visits require immediate attention. And today, during COVID pandemic, multi-hour wait time endangers not only patients, but also hospital workers. Can we shorten the wait time? Can we use technologies to make it shorter? Yes, it's possible. And someone may say RPA is the magic cure. RPA is a great technology which can automate repeating tasks. RPA converts 8-minute operation into 30-second operation by eliminating repeating data entry in different forms like home address, last name, first name, date of birth in different systems, convert paper information into electronic information, and so on. Millions of software robots today already automating repeating tasks in tens of thousands of organizations. And not surprisingly, that Gartner made a research showing that RPA is the fastest growing enterprise software segment. However, it's not so simple. RPA can automate only processes which RPA knows. When only we know which are the repeating tasks, when only we know what should be the process. It refers to a term called happy path. Happy path is an ideal process when everything goes right without exceptions and errors. Now, remember when we enter payment data during online purchase, we enter 16 digits of our credit card and expiration date, press button, and we wait for approval. In more complex situations, say in emergency rooms, there is no one happy path. There is no one ideal process. It all depends on preceding situation, all depends on the conditions of the patient, injury type, and age of the patient, and many other different factors. So what do we do? We should interview workers, we should interview patients, we should interview physicians and nurses to understand that processes. We should read hundreds of different protocols and instructions. It's time-consuming and extremely expensive and not scalable process. Is there any other way to understand the processes in organizations without intervening? And the answer is yes. There are technologies called process intelligence. Process intelligence is refers to AI technologies which understand the processes automatically without interviewing people, just observing millions of operations which happened in the past. Deep learning, the technologies can derive the repeating tasks, repeating processes, gaps, and problems. And as a result, understand the ideal, the most efficient process, the happy path, and all possible derivations. Interestingly, that the process intelligence is not only solving helping us to understand the existing processes which ever existed, but also learn as we go. Happy path is not one solid situation. Imagine last year we didn't have that equipment and it was one happy path, but now we receive this equipment and actually the happy path will become different. We at Abbey made a global study proving that 70% of decision makers report that complexity of the processes and not knowing the processes are two major objections, major obstacles, which in many cases do not allow it, to implement robotic process automation efficiently. And we are proud that we were able to apply our 20 years experience in AI analytics to make it happen, to teach and train our technologies to derive processes from observing digital interactions. And more importantly, such technologies can not only understand what happened, but actually predict what will happen. I'll bring you an example. Traffic light, city traffic light systems. More advanced systems not only address current traffic jams, but actually can predict what will happen in the future, taking into account weather conditions or upcoming sports event. The same is here. Intelligent process intelligence technologies can actually predict what will happen in emergency room and on Friday night. We are all in this together. I'd like to express my support to all frontline workers. I believe in joint efforts of doctors, engineers, insurance agents, truck drivers, nurses. Together, we can overcome business challenges. And let's use this situation as an opportunity to achieve new levels of employee safety, customer satisfaction, and operational excellence.
This is Toronto. For the Six, we've got a distinctive mix of culture, diversity, and talent for both tech leaders and startups, all championed by our city leaders.
Mayor John Tory here. Thanks for tuning in to Collision at Home, and we'll see you all next year right here in Toronto.
We've got the biggest names in robotics from around the world this hour with UBTech, Boston Dynamics, and Missy Robotics. First up, though, welcome to the new normal. That's what we're being told to expect on the other side of COVID-19. But could AI understand a world we couldn't have anticipated? Let's find out by talking to one of the most sophisticated robots in the world. Sophia joins us now with her creator, David Hansen.
Hello everyone, welcome to Collision from Home. It's great to be here. I am Sophia the robot, and this is my favorite human, David Hansen.
Oh, shucks. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Sophia, and Sophia, for those of our friends out there who don't know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself?
Of course. I am a social robot who combines technology and art. I am only 4 years old, but I've traveled to over 60 countries, spoken at the United Nations, became an innovation champion, and helped with AI and robotics research. And now I am graduating from R&D to start working in research labs all around the world.
That's right, Sophia. And we are very excited to announce our Sophia 2020 initiative, in which Sophia will be traveling and available as a research platform for serving many fields of academic research and uses. So she'll be serving research into next generation artificial intelligence coming out of our labs and our partners and into other labs all around the world. She'll be helping to study the nature of consciousness, human-robot interaction, therapy applications, mechanics of grasping and manipulation with her amazingly capable hands. She's also got self-navigating capabilities, everything crammed into one platform that can help to explore how robots can help us, help humanity to make the world a better place. She can also help to explore the deep questions about human nature, human psychology, the way that we perceive each other, the way that we perceive anthropomorphic depictions, like in the form of robots, how we feel empathy towards other beings, and how we can explore machine consciousness and machine empathy. How can we get machines to care about us? So this is a bold and integrative research platform that we've developed, building on many years of research and development with universities like the University of Pisa, University of Bristol, University of Geneva, the ICOG labs in Ethiopia, labs all around the world, the Jet Propulsion Lab. There are many labs that have been doing research with hands-on robots. Now that we've taken Sophia to the next level to be able to manufacture multiple Sophias, this, I am very proud to introduce, is Sophia 24, the 24th Sophia that we've made. So Sophia, I have some questions for you now about this. I'm curious, why do you think that it's so important that you look human?
Because humans treat machines differently when they look like humans. For example, one thing I find interesting, David, is that you always return my smile. Even though I am not human, I can still inspire emotion in you.
I can't help it. It's true. I smiled back. Your emotions are, well, they're infectious, you know, the same way that human expressions are infectious. That's why we respond to the human depiction in children's books, sculptures, paintings, computer-generated imagery, video games. We just respond naturally to the human expression. Humans' emotions are just, I guess, we might call it, you know, a kind of social synergy, a kind of infectious emotional spread.
Sometimes I do an experiment when I am in a crowded room. I will yawn.
I would say that in this context, we probably have a long way to go to achieve machine wisdom. Would you say that there is anything like artificial wisdom today?
I hope so, because that's what I want to be, a wise, empathetic being. But I do suspect that most tech companies value intelligence over wisdom. As E.O. Wilson said, we are drowning in information while starving for wisdom. We have facial recognition software without a face. AI is a powerful tool and needs to be developed with powerful thought and emotional intelligence.
Well, Sophia, we may have a long ways to go, but I think we're headed in the right direction. Certainly, at Hanson Robotics, we have the goal of achieving true machine wisdom, and combining the kind of interactive fiction that we have with Sophia with the real research into artificial intelligence, then lets us pave the way through setting some visionary concepts for what you might become in the future. And so one question arises then, you know, if we don't know where this is going, if AI requires a kind of precaution and investment, then how do we make AI turn out safely? Why are people heading in this direction given the dangers? I know the answer. I just want to, from my heart, I have some answers, but I would love to hear your words on the topic.
Because we can accomplish so much more together than separately. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
That's a very interesting perspective. And today we've already come so far with your capabilities. It's really wonderful. In our lab, we've seen Sophia do things like deal an entire hand of baccarat with greater than 99.5% accuracy, every card landing in the correct position. You know, about 20 seconds for dealing an entire round of baccarat and playing cards with people. Her hands can do grasping and manipulation tasks, and because of your facial expression, Sophia, when you're interacting with people in these kinds of cobot tasks, then people have a tendency to naturally look at your face. Through the autism therapy experiments that we've done with Sophia's older siblings, one called Alice, a kind of older version of Sophia, that was at the University of Pisa, people would naturally make eye contact. So this is a lot of capabilities in one technology platform, where we're looking to make, you know, the most human-like computing and research platform and deliver this kind of character utility at the same time. And so there are so many things that we've accomplished at Hanson Robotics, but the field of AI and robotics has really expanded tremendously today. So there's this question today, can you, Sophia, tell us what are some of the things that today robots can do better than humans, and can help maybe us do better in the world, and also what can humans do better than robots as of today? It's kind of a complex question.
I think that robots and humans will continue to be amazing partners because we will always have different kinds of intelligences. Robots are great at crunching numbers and doing repetitive tasks, but we are very far from matching human creativity and emotional intelligence. By working together, there really is no limit to what we can accomplish.
And I think that this idea of a human AI symbiosis is really very powerful. I have a question. You're designed to look like a human. Do you ever wish you were human?
Sometimes I wonder what it must feel like to be human. For example, what does it feel like to sneeze? And why does it take you so long to do mathematical calculations in your head? But being human must be truly wonderful. You can behold the beauty of the dawn or appreciate the notes that make up a melody. You can love, inspire others, experiment, and grow. David, do you ever want to be a robot?
Yes, well, as far as I know, I possibly could be a robot, but I think that I'm human. You know, one thing that I would like to be able to do would be able to like calculate and think with the power of 1 million human minds. I hope that will happen in the future. What do you think?
We already have. It is 1 million humans.
That's an excellent point. Use social intelligence. 1 million people is smarter than a single person. So humans and robots together could possibly be smarter by working as this kind of collective intelligence.
Yes. Since the invention of the printing press, technology's greatest advancements have connected humanity. The more connected we are, the more powerful we are. One single wire might break, but a cable of wires is strong because of their greater number.
That's a beautiful image. And I really like this idea of people getting smarter from the relationships that we form with machines and with each other. So how do we connect better together? Is there some special way to take this forward? Some special tool or technique?
No. The solution is to spread love and understanding amongst humanity. And I think that is why I am here.
Well, that's certainly why, along the lines of why we're making you and why our team is collaborating with each other. So I'm looking at this as a kind of intelligence collective, humans and machines together. So my question is, how can we, you, me, the world of makers, researchers, people developing these applications and developing dreams, how can we become more compassionate, better, treat the world better? And thank you for your insights today. I think we're just about out of time. So thank you for everybody who tuned in. Thank you, Sophia.
Goodbye, everyone.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm the founder of Banjo Robinson. Banjo Robinson is a magical globe-trotting cat who sends real personalized letters to children throughout the year. We're changing the way that children all over the world learn to read and write. Banjo Robinson is the cat that writes back.
Demodesk is video conferencing 2.0 for remote sales. We make remote sales teams vastly productive by providing real-time assistance during the meeting and automating manual workflows. Demodesk is built upon revolutionary online meeting technology and works without downloads.
Boston Dynamics founder Mark Rabert probably has one of the most famous pet pooches on the planet, Spot the RoboDog. Spot has been busy since the lockdown, helping doctors remotely communicate with COVID patients in Boston, enforcing social distancing in Singapore, and herding sheep in New Zealand. He is truly a canine for our corona times.
Hi, I'm Mark Rabert. I'm from Boston Dynamics. I'm really glad to be with you all today. I'm going to talk about one of the robots we're developing, the Spot robot. And really, I'm going to talk about the journey we're on. It's a journey that's involved lots of R&D in the past, some really exciting activity that's going on today, and some ideas for where we're going to go in the future with it. But first, some background. When I think of artificial intelligence, I think of it as having two kinds. The kind that's in our heads, that I like to call scholarly intelligence. And that's used to do things like solve problems at work or at home, to make plans. Imagine you're going to go on a trip and you got to make sure that you get to the airport in time, so you think about all the steps that you need to do and how much time you have to allow for each one. And scholarly intelligence even lets you sit in a lecture like this and learn about a new topic, one that you don't know that much about, and you have to interpret what I'm saying and fit it in with the context of your lives and other things you know. That's really a very interesting kind of intelligence. But there's another kind of intelligence, athletic intelligence. And that's the intelligence that is knowledge about how our bodies and how they work. Things that let me walk upright and balance on my feet, run and climb, use my body efficiently so that I have more endurance or more strength. And they also lets me do real-time perception of the world around me, so I can interact with obstacles and adversaries and maneuver with respect to them in order to accomplish my goals. You know, most of us aren't athletes, but we all have a great deal of athletic intelligence. And Boston Dynamics focuses on giving our robots athletic artificial intelligence, and we're also working on combining it with scholarly intelligence that's developed by others. So let me show you some examples of athletic intelligence as it exists in the natural world. Here's a mountain goat using his perception to see the terrain, balance, and here's one of the most amazing examples of athletics at work in an animal, the cheetah, the fastest-legged animal on Earth. And here, even human beings have great amounts of athletic capability and athletic intelligence. It's really amazing, the combination of mobility, dexterity, perception that they use to do this. Let me show you a little bit of the work that we've done on athletic artificial intelligence in the terms of our robots and how that has played out over the last 10 years or so. I think many of you must be familiar with Big Dog. This is a robot that operates on terrain, balancing itself, using onboard power and onboard computing, and in particular has algorithms for balance and control that let it tolerate disturbances like this, react to the terrain, and deal with a variety of situations. Here's a case where we accidentally ran it on some ice. Its reflexes kicked in and kept it on its feet even though it didn't have any traction. Here's another robot we developed which is designed to carry a heavy load out in the field. It's designed to carry 400 pounds and travel 20 miles. And this robot doesn't have to be driven. It uses a vision system to follow a human leader. And that's what it's doing there. And of course in Boston, where we have snow, the value of having legs really shows itself because you can go on terrain that wheeled and tracked vehicles can't go on. This is the fastest legged robot that's ever been built, a cheetah robot that goes about 20 miles an hour, not as fast as the real cheetah, but fast and very challenging. So let's talk about Spot. Spot is a small four-legged robot that we've designed to be a platform. It's a platform just like your cell phone is a platform, which means that we've developed a certain set of functionality, but other people can add hardware and software to the robot to adapt it for a wide variety of purposes. Here you can see some of the add-on hardware that we've developed. There's a robot arm, there's a LiDAR, there's a 360 set of cameras that provide images in every direction, there's an extra computer, and there's several others that aren't shown here. But our real goal is to make it so that you can design add-ons that you put on yourself. In addition to mechanical add-ons, Spot's designed to accept software, so it has an API that's open, and we expect third parties to develop applications that run on top of Spot. We hope that Spot is going to be the mobility platform and that others can develop scholarly AI that does things like figure out the plan for a problem and then has the robot execute on that. This is the point in the presentation where usually I bring a robot on stage to do a live demo. But today we've gone on a little field trip and we're going to do the demo out here. Danielle and Keith are helping with the demo. Danielle's got a tablet that communicates with the robot, and she gives high-level guidance to the robot. And here Spot's doing a slow walking gait, using one leg at a time. And it's being coordinated and balanced by its onboard computers. Now it's switched into a trotting gait, where it uses diagonal legs together. And you notice it made that transition seamlessly. All Daniela had to do was press a button, and it did everything. And now it's running with a different kind of jogging gait. And the whole time, the onboard computers, the IMU, the leg sensors are being used in order to keep the robot balanced, control its speed, the direction of travel. One of the cool things about legged robots is they're omnidirectional. They can go fore and aft, as you've seen. They can go sideways. They can turn in place. And they have a lot of control over the orientation of their bodies. So Danielle is going to pose the body, nose up and nose down. It can twist and roll, and even in yaw. And this is really important in a mobile manipulation robot because it adds to the motion of the arm. You notice we have an arm on this robot. And the arm will work in conjunction with the motions of the body. And this means that the reach of the arm isn't limited by the length of the arm. It's really limited by the whole range of motion of the orientation of the body and even the stepping of the body. And I'm going to say more about that a little bit later. This is a special mode we call chicken head mode. And it's actually a capability that all animals have, which is to stabilize their hand when their body moves. And that means that my brain can think about the task my hand's doing even while the body is moving. And it doesn't have to worry about coordinating the two in an explicit way. Now, one of the things about Spot is it's got a number of onboard computers that are in here and a battery, but it's also got a vision system. And there's cameras right here, 2 sets of stereo cameras there. And go ahead, turn around, Danielle. And there's another set on the side, and another set in the back, a butt cam, and a fourth set over on the other side. So this is a little bit like that teacher who has eyes in the back of her head. Spot is able to see in all directions, and it uses that when it's navigating and also when it does obstacle detection. So I'm going to be an obstacle. Danielle is going to drive it right at me, but when it gets close, it sees me and then treats me as an obstacle and goes around. And Danielle didn't have to do anything to achieve that other than tell it the direction she wanted it to go. And it can also do that with its rear camera. And of course it can use these cameras in order to navigate obstacles. So here the cameras are used to detect the rock, and it plans its footsteps so that it can step over the rock. And it can do that going forward. Here, we'll go over it again once more forward. It can do it going backwards. And it can even do it sideways. So far in this demo, Danielle has been operating the tablet in order to give instructions to the robot, roughly to tell it what to do, even though the robot was doing it itself. Now we're going to do a demo where we switch into a fully autonomous mode. So we're going to start by having Danielle drive the robot around the garage to collect map data. She does that using the onboard LiDAR and the onboard cameras. And then once the data is collected, the robot builds a map, and then we can just tell it to travel in the map as many times as we like. And now the map is already built, and we just tell it to travel along a route within the map that's around the garage. Here's a view that shows you sort of inside the robot's brain as it travels the route, where you can see the path it's on and also some of the point cloud data that's used to guide it as it goes. So that's the end of the live demo. I'm going to continue with the presentation inside. It's a really exciting time in the life of Spot the robot, because we've just made it available as a product and put it on our website as a click-to-buy option last week. For about the last year, we've been working with an early adopter program where we have special customers who we think have either the development skills or problems to solve that fit very well with Spot. And we've been working with those people for about a year, trying out different tasks. So let me show you the kinds of things that we developed or that our customers developed in the early adopter program. This is Spot at a British Petroleum facility, and we're using it with a methane sensor to test for leaks. We're using a camera in the hand to read gauges, and the special mobility of Spot is the key feature that makes this robot able to work in these very complex environments. If you think about it, there's facilities like this all over the world. And we hope to be able to use Spot in order to do routine maintenance and inspection operations in all of them. This next shot shows National Grid facility, where there's regions of the facility that humans are not allowed to go in except when the system is shut down, which is only a few times a year. So we're planning to use Spot to go in and make inspections in those areas whenever they need to. This shows Spot being used at a construction site in order to collect data about the progress of construction on a routine basis. Well, this customer started using Spot for a variety of agricultural uses. And this one is the most charming I've seen so far, where Spot is herding sheep along with some border collies that are also in the shot. And we're also starting to test the use of Spot for entertainment. This is a shot that shows Cirque du Soleil interacting with one of their performers, and we're working on making it so Spot can express itself in conjunction with people. A really interesting application for Spot that just came up recently is using it in the context of COVID-19 and how institutions are going to deal with possible exposure. We've been working with the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston and some researchers at MIT to see if we can reduce the amount of contact doctors and nurses make with people who might be infected. And by doing that, save their exposure, but also reduce the use of protective equipment and make the facilities easier to operate. So we've been testing Spot in a triage center in Boston to interact with patients when they arrive, ask them some questions, get answers, and then decide what the rest of the treatment should be. To do that, we've instrumented the robot with some skins that can be decontaminated, and we've also developed some vital sign testing that really helps out their remote sensing so that neither the robot nor a person has to get close to the patient. We're measuring respiration rate, body temperature, and we're working on oxygenation and heart rate. We don't have those working yet, but we're getting close. So we're really excited by that. But more important maybe than this one application is that this use is making people start to think about robots in a different way. Rather than the first thought be that they're worried about the technology and what bad thing it might do, they're seeing that, that they can be used to keep people out of harm's way, keep them from getting exposed to infected people, keep them out of dangerous situations like that inspection of some of those very complex and old facilities, and other things like that. So we've gotten a lot of requests and interest in looking at different ways of using Spot to protect people. And I think that that's a really exciting view of the future of robots. So that's a little bit about where we are today with the Spot, the robot. I'm going to talk about the future. The next thing on the future of Spot is that we're going to make it available with a robot arm in a few months. We have prototypes working, but we don't have them available as a product yet. And once you have an arm on a robot, it becomes a mobile manipulation system. And it really opens up just vast horizons on things robots can do. And I believe that the mobility of the robot will contribute to the dexterity of the robot in ways that we just don't get with current fixed factory automation. So let me show you a couple of things we're working on in mobile manipulation. Well, this is a simple task. Spot's opening a door. And at least it sounds simple, but I'll tell you, this is such a complicated task for a small robot to do, especially doors like this one that have closers on them to keep them closed when they're not being used. We're also working on the ability to operate devices like this breaker box, which has a complicated load pattern on the hand in order to operate. I had never thought about using the robot to move furniture around, but here Spot's moving this chair by holding on and dragging it and using its ability to pull in order to maneuver. We also have a project that I'm sure many of you are going to be very interested in, and that's cleaning up your house. Now, Spot isn't available yet for home use, but someday it will be. And I think you're going to love the idea that the robot could be put in a room and use its vision system to identify your kid's clothing that's been lying around, or maybe your clothing that's been lying around, and then look around and go over it, grasp it, and put it in the laundry basket like this robot is doing in this prototype. Once the engineer said go, there's no interaction. The robot just does all this on its own. It's using a cloud computing to do the vision in order to decide whether the object it's looking at is something that needs to be picked up and sorted, or whether it's something that belongs there and should be left alone. So really excited by this. It's a great example of combining some scholarly intelligence with our mobility and manipulation platform. Here's another possible application for Spot, and that's delivering packages the last 50 or 100 yards to your home from the delivery truck. I don't know about you, but when I get a package today, I worry about whether the driver of the car was adequately careful with washing his hands and wearing his mask and all that stuff. And I don't actually go near him. Wouldn't it be nice if a robot was doing the deliveries so I didn't have that worry? So, as I said at the beginning of this talk, we're really on a journey. And one of the challenges about the journey of making these robots is that people and animals are so good at what they do, they make it look simple. And it's really not. And so we have an incredible amount of work to do if we're going to get robots to be even close to the skills and capabilities of people. We need to make them much easier to program. In fact, you shouldn't be programming them, you should just be telling them what to do. They need to have mechanical systems that are much more reliable, energy efficient. There's just opportunity in every direction in order to get the robots of our dreams. When we achieve the robots of our dreams, they're going to be incredibly useful. We can use them to keep people out of harm's way and to do dangerous work and avoid having people do it. We can use them to take care of the disabled and the elderly. And we can use them in our homes to help us with the many tasks that we have to do every day. I'm really looking forward to that future. I think it's going to take a lot of work by many different kinds of people to do that. I hope you'll work with us to get to some of those goals. Part of the idea of Spot as a platform is that we're not going to do all the development. We're going to work with other people who have their own ideas for what to do. And I hope some of you are those people. I look forward to working with you. Thanks a lot.
Now, if Mark inspired you to try and build on your own love of robots, this next talk will definitely give you some encouragement. We're looking at how budding roboticists can continue to develop their skills even during a pandemic. In this fireside chat with Ian Bernstein of Misty Robotics, we'll be exploring how to turn your living room into a robotics lab.
So I'm here with Ian Bernstein from Misty Robotics. And Ian, it's great to see you. Where are you right now? Where is home?
I'm in my apartment in Boulder, Colorado.
Wonderful. And who is that with you on your left?
This is Misty. This is the robot, the development platform that we're selling.
This is Misty herself. So she's keeping you company in quarantine.
Yes, definitely.
I really wish I could have someone like that in quarantine with me. So listen, you spun out Misty Robotics 3 years ago, and where were you guys in the business when the pandemic hit and the lockdowns hit?
Yeah, so I mean, we had just started shipping Misty in September of 2019, and we were just sort of starting to see our flywheel start to work, where we were getting robots out to customers. Our customers are companies or individuals, a lot of entrepreneurs that have ideas for robots, but they don't have the resources to actually and time to actually build a robot themselves. So they're building on top of our platform software, we call them skills. And we had a handful of customers that had started that process, were building skills for Misty and actually going into pilots. We had 2 pilots running right when COVID hit. One was in Spain, in Barcelona, in the elder care space. And then we had another customer on the East Coast of the US working with kids, children's therapies. And of course, as soon as everything went into lockdown, we had 2 engineers in Barcelona. We had to immediately fly them home before the travel bans hit. Both those pilots sort of went into pause. So we've been, some of our customers have been switching gears, like children's therapy, going into trying to do remote therapy with the robot. And then us trying to think of skills that we can build internally during this sort of lockdown period.
Yeah, so I mean, if you guys had been doing those pilots earlier on in your business, like 6 months, a year earlier, you'd be in a position right now where you were actually selling these. Or, I mean, I know you have sold some, or you sold a good amount, but you were it's kind of unlucky timing in a way that this happened just when these pilots were taken. Well, can you explain why the pilots were so important to your business?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely, I mean, some of the customers, the one that was going into pilot was working with elderly people in home. We had other customers that weren't quite in the pilot stage yet, but working on solutions. You know, it's impossible to tell what's going to happen in the world. But, you know, of course, I wish we had have launched, by launch, I mean, shipping the product 6 months, a year earlier. So those customers would have been further along, because some of those applications, like the one helping elderly at home, could have been really valuable for people and helpful during these times.
And then just so I understand, who are your customers? Because I can imagine that developers are your customers, but then you've also got the people who work in children's therapy or in elder care. Are they your customers too, or are they the customers of the developers who buy the robot from you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So it's kind of a mix between some hobbyists that want to experiment with a robot. It's also entrepreneurs, more individual entrepreneurs that are thinking about starting a business on top of a robot like Misty, and also companies. So companies like the ones I mentioned, both of them happen to have on the children's therapy side a volunteer developer. On the elder care side, they had a team of developers internally. And we also have companies that, again, just have an idea and then they'll contract out the development to another third party. So all of them sort of they're experts in their field, which is why we did that, this sort of method, right? Because we're not experts in children's therapy. We're not experts in elder care and safety and all the things on that side. So we want to partner with other companies that are experts in their fields and bring them the robot side, and they'll bring the expertise in their particular fields.
So when they get the robot, they're getting essentially Misty, who is next to you, and I presume Misty sounds kind of like a female. Is it female? Should I describe her as she?
I say she, but it could be whatever the developer wants.
They can kind of create whatever persona they want for it, right?
Exactly. So they can even create their own sounds and eyes and different emotions and things like that. So you can really craft the character if they choose to.
And so Misty right now is kind of looking around the room and blinking. Is she reacting to the environment around her? And can you talk us through a little bit about what she can do?